You know, I think those are like strong concepts to remember, but like it's also goes in line with like don't give people their flowers when they're dead. Like tell them, you know, communicate. Yeah. Well, you know, where do I draw a line for forgiving is a question of like I forgive everybody. I've had some horrible things happen to me and it's forgiven. I don't really have a line for forgiveness, and I think that that's a deficit in my own character on a certain level because like it's definitely can be like self-harming after a certain point. Um but yeah, I don't really have a I won't or I can't forgive someone, you know, because I understand that like we're all just trying to get by, and I really do live in such a way that embodies that like I'm not perfect, and how many people have I hurt inadvertently? Like wasn't trying to, but like the result is the result. I think after a good conversation, it can all someone who's not remorseful, yeah. And then I also, you know, yeah, because like I think it's easier to forgive someone with no remorse than it is to forgive someone with remorse. Because if you have remorse, that means that like on a certain level you could have or did know better, and still there was that act of betrayal. But someone without remorse, that's basically you sharing with me that like you're not capable of the thing or the standard I'm trying to hold you to. So why should I hold you to that standard in the first place? If that makes sense. Like I'm just asking for my feelings to be hurt effectively. That's gonna kind of bother me. And I think that's a harder thing for people to do, to forgive someone that's not remorseful. But like, it's not really for them. It's for you. Peace of mind. You know, you've done and said all you needed to say, and like, that's that. What does tomorrow hold? What about yourself? Do you find it hard to forgive someone who's not remorseful or has no remorse? Mm-hmm. Didn't happen to me, but happened to someone else I really love. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be tough. I think recognizing you will make mistakes yourself. And in knowing that you will make mistakes, treat others as you would want to be treated. Truly. Would you want forgiveness? Then give it. Even if they're not in a state to feel bad about what they did, because I am sure when, you know, the rubber meets the ground, there will be times in which you won't feel bad about the decision you made because you made it for yourself. You know, no, you worded it perfectly fine. It definitely came across. And I think that that's even one of those things that is a uniquely hard thing to forgive a perpetrator on someone you love, because this is someone who, if they did something to you, if your loved one did something to you, you would easily be able to forgive them, right? And because you have love for that person, there's a certain patience and grace that you give that relationship. But then when it comes to a perpetrator who is effectively not at the same level as the person you love, there tends to be lack of capability to give grace, compassion, space, and understanding, especially seeing the emotions in which your loved ones had to express or lack thereof. Like, because sometimes we can notice disrespect before our loved ones notice the disrespect, but I think it is still an exercise of grace, compassion, love, and care to be able to say, I'm human, you're human, even if you don't see it right now. Maybe there's space for reflection in the future, and maybe you are someone who won't ever reflect on this and have remorse, but I can then look within myself and give more room for grace because you taught me a lesson. You taught me a lesson to be more remorseful. Sometimes it's not about changing people as much as it's about changing yourself, because those people are going to exist if they're going to exist, but how do you want to exist alongside them? It's hard to change others. It's easy to change yourself, and to be that change and inspire that in others goes a long way. And it sucks to have to stand up and be that person, to be the bigger person. But like, who do you want to be? Some small guy? It's all about how you envision yourself truly. And then also showing in that strength to your loved one to be able to say, I can forgive who hurt you. And that sounds like a crazy thing, to forgive someone who didn't hurt you, but to share with them a message of love and compassion and understanding and moving forward with growth and not regression, right? It's one to be able to defend yourself. It's another to know when to defend, and the bob and weave, and the strike back, and when to just walk away. You know, I don't know. I don't know if that mouth ramble helps, but it definitely is like how I look at it. What if they know it's wrong and they know that what they're doing is horrible and horrific, and to feel no remorse? I think that's where that comes into play, of knowing when to turn tail, right? Because if something horrible happens to me once, okay, it happened, and I can still stick around in a certain capacity. If it happens again, I'm well aware that it's a pattern, and that I probably, this person will probably never change, or won't change in a sizable way to, like, not harm me in the process. And so walking away isn't always a bad thing for yourself. Giving them space to grow away from you. So if this hurt keeps happening to your loved one, the recommendation that I would have is, if they can't help it and they can't get away from it, it sounds like more of a parental situation, or a caregiver, or someone who is fundamental in the day-to-day of your loved one. And with that, it can be tough, right? I think when it comes into a situation in which you absolutely cannot remove yourself from that, I think that's when it's either more instrumental to grow as a person, in terms of, because it sounds like victim blaming, but it's not, right? It's grow as a person to be more tactical. And I know that there's trauma laced in that, but do they have to be present around that person all the time? Are there extracurriculars that they can do? How can they circumvent being around that person that is inflicting said trauma on them, until they do have a clear picture? Setting a goal of removal is also, can be seen as like, you know, um, instrumental towards removing yourself. setting that goal and angling yourself towards that. Does that make sense what I'm saying there? And focusing on that goal and like making sure that you are doing everything in your power to get there, and doing everything in your power for day-to-day peace. Because if it's not going to change, it's not going to change. If you can't escape it, you can't escape it. And I'm not one to... I think we do have more power than we'll give ourselves credit for sometimes. But I'm also not in a space to know the ins and outs and be privy of their situation. So they very well may not be able to escape that. But like, you know, cornered animals bite back. You know, and I think, you know, it's good to not corner yourself, or to recognize that if you had the power to bite back, then you also have the power to change the circumstance before it gets to a point of no return. Of course. No, I appreciate you feeling comfortable with, you know, bringing that to the table. Because it's a very real thing, you know. Forgiveness and pain, trauma, you know, and how to deal with the perpetrators, how not to become a perpetrator, how to not get stuck in victimhood, how to not be so angry. Just remembering people are human, remembering that they're children, you know, remembering you are a child. How to forgive is just that piece of recognizing they're human, you're human. When to forgive is more tricky. Because when to forgive, in my opinion, every time, right? Never forget. Right? You can forgive someone and not forget what they did and hold them accountable. But to forgive them because, you know, you're human, they're human. We're not God, we're not the universe in this current form. So who am I to actually judge you, which is a part of like not forgiving. But like you said, that can be hard to like center in one's mind. And how do you really do that? What is the process of letting it go? And how do you let it go whilst holding them accountable? Well, I think it's at a level of you don't demean them behind their mistake. And it's okay to talk about their mistake. It's not okay to badger them and berate them with their mistake. I think that's a part of being able to have the conversation, is the accountability, recognizing the matter if in which you talk about the thing you're forgiving them for is learning to not berate them. And, you know, not weaponizing effectively. But I would, for me, I forgive every time. And again, that may be a character deficit and I can recognize that. But I just know I'm human. I have messed up. There are things that I've messed up about that I don't even know I messed up about. You know, the people have not been able to communicate that to me. I know that there are times I messed up and I knew I was messing up when I did it and I still chose to do it. And wouldn't go back and change it. So, you know, if we can just be honest about those things, then I think it would make it super easy to recognize that like everyone is trying to get by. And everyone is a lesson or a blessing, you know. But it comes with time, I would say. You know, it does come with time, learning to forgive and how to forgive, when to forgive, and what is your own metric in that. Because I think it's a unique to person thing. Because there are some people who never forgive, Because watch it. If I have to forgive you, that means you did something that was probably unforgivable. And I can understand that concept. I don't abide by it, but I can understand that concept. I guess I also think about it like in a perspective of like, a lot of times that person doesn't even, it's not about you forgiving them as much as it is about them forgiving themselves. Like, I've had people kind of be upset that I'm not upset, because being upset at someone for messing up is it's like a way of them being able to reach atonement on a certain level. And not being upset can take away that atonement. Like, what can I do? What can they do to make it better? But when I say like, well, there's nothing wrong, but they know they did something wrong, or they feel that they've done something wrong, like that's where it starts to get weird. But you know, those people with no remorse, it's like, yeah, you know, you are truly being yourself. Like, I tell people all the time, you don't have to come and look for forgiveness from me, because there's nothing to forgive. Like, I don't have the power to forgive you, to make what you did go away. Like, you did it. But in the same vein, is to say that I'm always forgiving you, because like I don't see anything that a human can do is so wretched and horrible. And there's no caveat in that outside of like, you know, the standard. I stretch myself to say, how could you do that to a child? How could you do that to an elderly person who is effectively a child? You know, X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be. But beyond that, like, it's all pretty human nature and standard. So, yeah. Really appreciate you being here. It you know, allows for some good conversations, and like, as much as the conversation may be helping you, it's also helping me. They know, you know, they say when you understand something because you can express it, you can teach it, you can break it down into its smallest pieces. And I think this gives me space to break things down so that I have a better understanding of them myself. Thanks. I'm human. I'm just a guy, you know, but it means a lot to be seen in that regard. I guess I hear it often. I just, maybe I'm hard on myself. Maybe I have an unreasonable standard. And on a certain level, because there may be no standard, right? Like, it's hard to measure something that you don't have a metric for. So when people say that I'm a good man, you know, or a good person, it's like, thank you, but what does that really mean? I guess like me searching for that meaning to myself, because like, you know, good and bad don't exist. It's really like it's a spectrum, like everything else, and deeply personal. You know, people say I suck at taking compliments, because like someone can say like, oh, you're attractive, or oh, you're, you know, whatever that, you know, adjective is, and it's like, okay. Like, because like for me, it's not like I feel weird or anything about it. It's just like, all right, anyway, like, you want a Sunday, like you want to go eat or something, like, it's commonplace. Who do I look up to, and who is my idol person? Great questions. Who do I look up to? You know, I don't, I'm gonna be honest with you. You've been honest with me. I'm gonna be honest with you. I've said that there were certain opinions and perspectives I can't say aloud, because people are definitely going to like turn their head and say, how dare this person, right? But I want to be in a space to complete. What does that mean? Complete. Expound that for me. I think for me, my like I value a better way of saying this is I value traits of people. I typically don't look up to people, but I do value traits of people who can move the masses. And I think this is gonna sound so bad. I know that, like, especially like for the wider world at large, but like Hitler was someone who was like very goal driven, even if the goal that he was going towards was very adverse to like common day people. But the mentality that was there to push past opposing views and like make a thing happen is like I admire that trait, and even to be able to profess in such a way that moves masses. I think that's why I look at like influence in a certain way. And then Genghis Khan, right? The to be able to decimate in the way in which that was done in such a prolific way to where it's talked about. And I guess that's why I have the perspective of like good and bad isn't very subjective. Compliments. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, like I appreciate compliments, but compliments are weird as well. Um, Especially when people, I think it's weird when people fish for compliments, and then I'm just not one to necessarily give compliments, because for me, my mind, I automatically think the best of people already. So to me, it's like talking about the benign. Like you don't go around saying air is invisible because we all know it's invisible. So in the same way, I don't tell someone that they're beautiful because you're always beautiful, or I don't say happy birthday because I always value your birth, your existence. you know I struggle to say I love you so much because I always show love and always love you. So talking about something that we should already understand, and I don't have any insecurity about you knowing, or about you as a whole, right? You as any person, looking at and talking to. So I think that's why compliments are weird for me personally. Yeah, yeah, no, it's never about massacring of people, right? I think that comes with that personality type and like what the goals were, but no, like moving masses. Because arguably, what are our governments doing now? Like every government has their own dirty secret, and they have a lot of them, and that's how they can control media and the things that be. So we look down at Hitler and the what they were doing as a group, and we say, hey, those people were bad. Well, that's because they've been painted as the bad guys, but the people who you say are the good guys do the same things. They just never let you find out, or they let you find out and spin the story in a different way. It's happening all around you right now as we speak. Atrocities are being done under the sanction of what a government says is okay for it to be done. And so the everyday average person goes around thinking la di da di da, like life is great. My government loves me. My government cares about me. Oh, they would never do such horrible things. We kill droves of people all the time to exist in the way in which we do. Right? In America, 600,000 people go missing every year. 600,000. What? Like and what? You think that like what's actually happening there? You know? Um it's interesting, you know? But yeah, I know that that perspective of like, it's jarring to hear that. I do know that. And that's something I'm afraid of, putting out there. But we'll, because that's a part of this, don't pause. Like, be real. Can we just have a real conversation that's filled with utter honesty? And thank you for hearing me out. Because I guarantee you there are plenty of people who wouldn't have. Like, it's just too jarring. But in the same vein, I guess, not to clean it up, but also to add, like I look up to or I admire the traits and qualities of, MLK or Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali. Like, you know, these are influential people who, like, for better or worse, like, they were human. They had their flaws and their faults, and like those flaws and faults were very much so for the public to see, and kind of, put out there to villainize them in a certain capacity. But like, they changed the world and like fought for what they believed in. Yeah, it's shocking, right? And I think a lot of people would be able to recognize that like, oh wait, I've been villainizing a person because someone told me they were a villain, not so much because I truly feel some type of way about it. And I don't mean that the atrocity was bad, and I or wasn't bad, right? I don't mean that the atrocity wasn't bad. What I mean is, if we truly cared about things like that, why do we allow them to still go on today? Because protest without action is just you throwing a tantrum. You're not changing anything, right? So then what? Right? We say we care, but I have an iPhone, an iPad, and all these other Apple devices or technology. I mean, I'm streaming right now. How many people had to be displaced or harmed, or their way of living was destroyed, or the planet, and all the things, like all of the things? How many horrible things had to happen for me to have any of the things I have? And if I truly had a problem with atrocities, why are we still living in it? It's like saying, oh, they were the bad guy, whilst you have a monocle and you're stroking your cat, sitting on, your forbidden riches, if that makes sense. Everything we have is off the backs of somebody else. The way we exist, the land we live on, etc., and so forth. Atrocities is a part of human nature. I think I just accept it. Hey, let me hear your hot take about Adolf. What you got? Mmm. Off what merit? Lay it on me. Oh wow. Ooh, that is a hot take. That's a strong hot take too. Like, insightful, because like, in that regard, yeah, you're right. Like, that change has still been affecting people to this day, right? Um I think modern medicine as a whole, like, could go for a nice revamping, because there are so many practices that we have that like don't really help anyone. And also, that's a good history fact. I appreciate you sharing that with me. It'll definitely go in my memory bank as like one of those things that like, hey, did you know?